Welcome back to Sous Vide Everything, guys. Today I'm going to show you the reason why you should always cook your Chateaubriand sous vide. It is expensive, it is wonderful, it tastes awesome, but most importantly, you cannot mess it up.
And this is the Chateaubriand. As you know, this is an expensive cut, and for very good reason, because it comes from tenderloin, which is a piece just like this. And this is not a regular tenderloin, this is a Wagyu marbling score 6 and 7. When I remove it from the packaging, this is what it looks like. As you can see, it almost looks like a snake. That's because it's located in the back muscle of the cow. This cut also does not do almost any work. That's why it is extremely tender. As you can see, this one came already kind of clean, but obviously there is a silver skin right on top. That has to be removed because it doesn't taste good, it's chewy, and it just gotta go. To remove it, it's pretty straightforward. Just grab a nice sharp knife and go to town. Just keep in mind one thing, do not take a lot of meat out, because if you do, it's just basically like throwing money away. Once I was done, you can see that it was nicely clean and no waste. The next thing to do is the butchering. This right here is what they call the heel, but I just call it the head of the tenderloin. Usually there's a piece of the chain that goes around just like this, but because this one is completely clean, it didn't clump with it, there's just a little piece. So I'm just gonna take this one out so that I can pan fry it. But here's the most important part right now. This is the location of the Chateaubriand, which is right in the middle. It is the most tender and thickest part of the whole cut. That is why it's so expensive. But one of the things that you not see very often is this. Check it out, that type of marbling. That is very unusual for tenderloin. But because this is Wagyu, this is what you get. And honestly, that's just beauty to my eyes. So after the very first slice, the next thing to do is to take the other end, because once you're done, you are left with the middle part, which is called the Chateaubriand. It is one of the most expensive part of the cow, and as you already know, for good reason. But now that you're familiar with this cut, I'm going to be preparing it two different ways so that we can see which way is best. First is going to be the traditional version, and this one, just like the previous one, is also Wagyu, and it does have a beautiful marbling. The first thing I like to do is to trestle it with butcher's twine. This will ensure to keep a nice even shape throughout the cook. You can really get fancy with the tying, but let me tell you something, as long as you make something like this, it will be good to go. The next step is to season it, but for an expensive cut like this, it deserves a little special treatment. And for that, I like to do what's called dry brine. It is a fancy word that means put salt on it and let it rest on your refrigerator overnight. And what this does is that it allows the salt to penetrate nicely and deeply into the meat and also tenderizes it. So once the salt was all over the Chateaubriand, the next thing to do is to put it on a cooling rack and let it rest on my refrigerator overnight. Because once that has happened, as you can see, the salt is completely gone, which basically translates to a perfectly salted piece of meat. But at the same time, we do need some seasoning. And for that, I kept it pretty simple. I threw in a little bit of freshly ground black pepper followed by garlic powder, nothing else. And as always, make sure to season all sides. Once that was done, it was now time to cook it. And for that, I used my powerful stove with my cast iron skillet. You definitely want to use a high temperature oil. For this cook, I'm actually using avocado oil. And the first thing we gotta do is to put a nice beautiful sear all throughout the whole thing. It usually takes anywhere between 1 minute to 2 minutes per edge. I like to make sure I get a nice golden crust throughout the whole thing. Once I've achieved the perfect crust to my liking, I set my gas stove to medium-low heat and threw in some butter and rosemary, because the next step is to baste our roast. One of the biggest tips I can give you is to use a lot of butter, and definitely use a nice large spoon, and baste that meat like there's no tomorrow, because as you're doing so, you will be developing some incredible flavors. I mean, take a look at this. Come on, that's just insane. Another thing you can do if you don't want to use a lot of butter is to move the Chateaubriand around just like this. It is basically the same thing as basting, but you will be using less butter. As you can see, by the time I was done, I've achieved the perfect golden brown crust. The only thing left to do is to get the internal temperature to 135 degrees Fahrenheit. And the best way to do that is to put it on a cooling rack and set your oven to 250 degrees Fahrenheit until that is achieved. Because once that internal temperature is reached, the only thing left to do is to remove the butcher's twine, let it rest for 10 minutes, and then slice it up. That is the traditional Chateaubriand. And as I took my first slice, whoa, take a look at that. That's just mouth-watering. But as you can see, there's a large overcooked part around the whole thing. But I'll tell you one thing, this does look delicious. And I made it even better and fancier by using a sauce. I'm talking about an amazing sauce. And to make it, it was very easy. Using the same cast iron skillet we just used to cook it, I started by draining the rosemary and the butter. To deglaze all the goodness that was left behind on the pan, I threw in a little bit of brandy. And of course, light it up on fire. This is completely unnecessary, but it is a nice show for your family. Just make sure you do it safely. Once the alcohol has mostly evaporated, as you can see, I was left with an almost clean pan. Then I threw in a little bit of beef stock because we were ready to use our special ingredient. And this is the one I'm talking about. It is called a demi-glace sauce, and it is one of the most delicious things you can throw in a steak. So for my sauce, I threw in 2 little packages, mixed it well, and made sure that it combined with the beef stock. Because the next thing to do was to throw in some heavy cream. And as always, remember exact amount and ingredients always in the description down below for you. Now the only thing left to do is to let the sauce reduce so that it has the consistency that you're happy with. Because of the demi-glace sauce and the fond left on the pan, there is no need for seasoning. It should be perfectly seasoned. But of course, always taste it and adjust to your liking. Because once it's fully reduced to the consistency you're happy with, your sauce is done. This, my friends, is one of the best sauces I've ever made to go with steaks. And it is just perfect to pair up with our Chateaubriand. Another side dish that I thought it would go really awesome with the Chateaubriand would be some amazing potatoes. And these are not your everyday potatoes. They are not only fancy but also very delicious. And to make them at home, it's a breeze. Honestly, any large potatoes will work, but this one was the one I had available in my supermarket. I started by first peeling them, and the best way to do is to use a peeler. And once they're fully peeled, remember to throw them in cold water so that they do not turn brown. The next thing I did was to split them right in half. To make sure that they do not roll around on meat, I'd also cut the other edge. And as always, keep them in cold water. In a baking sheet, I added a good amount of olive oil. Spread it well to make sure that everything was completely coated. I first laid them belly side down, then I flipped them to ensure they had a nice coating of olive oil. For the seasoning, I threw in a little bit of salt, followed by freshly ground black pepper and smoked paprika. And just like beautiful steaks, I made sure to season both sides. And make sure you season them well, especially with salt. To cook them, I set my oven to bake at 400 degrees Fahrenheit. Threw them in there and waited for 20 minutes. Once that was up, it was time to flip them. And if they get stuck on you like this, make sure to use a spatula. That makes the job a lot easier. Now here's where I took these potatoes to the next step. I'm actually using the juices from the bag, which I made from a previous cooked when I cooked chicken. But just in case you don't have those juices available, you can always use chicken stock. The only thing left to do is to put them back into the oven so that those potatoes can soak up all of those juices. Because once it's done, this is what it looks like. I mean, take a look at these potatoes. I cannot explain to you how good they are. This technique I just used is also called fondant potatoes, but this is my take on it. To finish them off, I threw in a little bit of oregano and the olive oil that was left in the pan. And I mean, come on, take a look at these. That is just insane. But to take it to a whole new level, I chose to grate a little bit of Parmesan cheese right on top. But I honestly think making the perfect Chateaubriand to go along with them is the right thing to do. And for that, I think Sous Vide can definitely do the trick, because a prestigious cut like this deserves it. And to cook it sous vide, it's really impossible for you to make a mistake. The first thing I did was to season it. And for that, I only threw in salt, freshly ground black pepper, and a little bit of garlic powder, nothing else. Unlike the traditional cook, you don't need to dry brine it. That's because it's going to be cooked in vacuum. And once you pull a vacuum on it and you cook it for a long period of time, it will automatically dry brine. That is the beauty of sous vide. And to keep the same flavor as the previous one, I'm going to throw in a little bit of rosemary. Once that's done, all there's left to do is to vacuum seal it and get it ready for the water bath. Talking about that, I'm cooking it at 131 degrees Fahrenheit for 3 hours. And once it's fully cooked, I can't wait for you to see the huge difference.
As you saw it there, the traditional version gives you those types of result. I gotta be honest, as I sliced it open, my mouth did water quite a bit, everybody. It is phenomenal. Just looking at it, smelling it, it's fantastic. But now the sous vide version. As you already know, I cooked it at 131 degrees Fahrenheit for 3 hours. That is the perfect time and temperature for the Chateaubriand. We are hungry, it is ready. Let's take them out. Let's do it. The smell that is coming out of the bag, everybody, as soon as you take it out, it just hits your nose. You know it's going to be something amazing. Now, I'm going to be using the same exact sauce that I used for the traditional version with the sous vide one. As you guys already know, it is easy to make. At the same time, one of the important things you want to do right now is go as hot, as fast as possible to get a nice sear. And the best way to do that is to use the flamethrower. But we also want that butter basting, because we know that flavor that comes from butter basting is incredible. So one way to do it is to put the sear halfway, you stop, and then you baste it, and then you continue with a little bit more sear. That's the best way to use it with a flamethrower. But I know my Chateaubriand doesn't look that good right now. But watch this. All right, everybody, here we have our beautiful spread today. What do you think, Enjo?
Lately, you've been telling the truth. You've been saying it's beautiful and it's beautiful.
And filet mignon, yes? Or better yet, Chateaubriand. The center cut of the filet mignon. Well, you guys already know the best part of the filet mignon, everybody. So here's the deal, Angel. We got some incredible potatoes over here. Yeah, these are special potatoes, not done, you know, it's a little bit different.
They look special.
I know. That's a little bit of Parmesan cheese. With all that being said, let's just give it a try, huh? Potato times, everybody. Cheers.
Cheers. Oh, man.
It is very flavorful potato.
It's soft, but it has like this little layer on the outside since it's cooked on the outside.
Yeah.
And it's like you get the right bite. You get what I'm saying? Like when you bite it, it's like,
Let's be honest here. It's not about the potatoes. It is about the filet mignon.
I don't know, bro.
No?
I don't know.
The potatoes can definitely stand on their own, right? All right, let's go for the filet mignon. Cheers, everybody. Ooh. Oh, that's amazing, though. I'll tell you. It tastes absolutely amazing.
There's a little bit of a bite to it, but it's still super soft. It's still flavorful.
All right, let's try this one. Visually, you can tell already that it looks kind of different, right?
Not just visually, my fork.
Your fork went through
My fork tells me everything I need to know.
I know, right? Super extremely tender as soon as you're going.
Definitely gonna be softer than the last one.
You can tell already even without putting it in your mouth.
Yeah, and then you can kind of visually see it too. This one has a little bit more of a ring.
Right.
This one's just straight up pink.
Cheers, everybody. Oh, come on.
Yeah. Man, that flavor is good.
It's like you're eating something different. That's what it's like. This and this is not the same
It's
kind.
different, yes, it is. If there's anything I could say, they both taste really good.
Yeah.
But this one definitely is.
More tender, right?
It's more like medium. You know, it's like more like medium well. I mean, not well, medium rare. Sorry.
And by the way, this is traditional version. This is the sous vide version, right? So the biggest
one this time.
That's sous vide one, I know. So the biggest difference is that you have a bigger gray band, which gives you two types of texture. You get that texture that is kind of like well done because of the edge right here. You know what I mean? Because it's cooked longer. But this one, there's no well done. It's just basically perfectly medium rare all the way through. Anyway, guys, these are the results. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do enjoy this video, make sure you give it a thumbs up. If you're not a subscriber, be sure to subscribe for future videos. Remember, if you are interested in any of the equipment I use, everything's always in the description down below. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you guys on the next one. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye. And make sure you make the sauce. The sauce is crazy.
The sauce is so fancy.
It's like... That's a perfect description, Angel.
That's the only thing that came to my mind.